Hi everyone. Today we're going to be talking about we're going to be continuing with the series about the 6 most influential moments in the 2020 national polling state of the race. Right now we're going to be taking a look at what I take to be the second most, and then in a few days we'll take a look at the most influential moment in the national 2020 polling. So, what I take to be the second most influential, the Sanders slow but steady rise. So, this started at around the December point. This is the graphic here. It started in around December, and it just continued and continued to grow. And he kind of was surging at the right time, right? So yeah, there was some stumbles along the way, but overall, there's a clear trajectory in that he is definitely, he had a bit of a rise and then mostly staying even. And then definitely from about January or so, really starting to pick up steam here and surging eventually past Joe Biden right here. This was after Iowa. So getting into January, he was surging, and then he continued to surge after his wins in the early states. But then after South Carolina and Super Tuesday, he lost ground to Joe Biden, who had a really, really massive surge. But then after some of the other candidates dropped out, he might have got some support from people like Senator Elizabeth Warren, and even a few percentage point support from moderate candidates. But it's clear that this rise for Sanders was very influential, because if Sanders had just stayed at around here, he would never have passed Joe Biden, or maybe only very briefly, and he would never have been a real contender for the race. But at the end of the day, we saw that Sanders was really able to gain a lot of steam at the right time, and unlike some people like Senator Warren, who peaked too early, or Senator Harris, who also peaked too early, Sanders seemed to peak at right the exact point where he'd want to. He was surging before Iowa, which means he won Iowa, or he won the popular vote in Iowa. That gave him the momentum going into New Hampshire. He did the 1-2 Iowa, New Hampshire, and then he went 1-2-3 Iowa, New Hampshire, Nevada. He came up short, obviously, in South Carolina by a pretty big margin. Bernie won Nevada by about the same margin that Joe Biden won in South Carolina. So, so Sanders rise, and then all the moderates dropped out and swooped in to help Biden right at the last minute, right before Super Tuesday, which was definitely important for them to do. Otherwise, Sanders very well might be the nominee. And so yeah, Bernie Sanders rising quite a lot there in that lead up, and he never really stopped rising, right? He just kind of continued to rise, and that's pretty incredible growth for a candidate to be able to be steadily rising for quite a long time without coming down and falling, and that's one of the things that was good for Senator Sanders, in that he was able to continue that rise when other candidates, when they had risen, they had fallen back. Whereas you can really see he never stopped rising. He was always surging up. And so that was interesting to take a look at as well. But this was a very influential moment, because it meant that I think that if Sanders had not had that rise, he probably would not have won in Iowa. He would maybe, people like Pete Buttigieg would have won Iowa, which would have given him the momentum and him the thing. And if Sanders hasn't still risen, then maybe Pete Buttigieg, with full-on momentum from Iowa, he wasn't too far behind Sanders in New Hampshire. Buttigieg could have got the 1-2 scenario, and then yes, maybe Sanders would have been able to not have all that momentum, and then maybe Biden could have won Nevada, and then Sanders not winning any of the first 3 states, and then also with with South Carolina, which he wouldn't do well in, and Super Tuesday, where he didn't do well in, then Sanders would be virtually done. But he peaked at the right time when the campaign really needed it, and it did not work, but it did work in the sense that he was able to surge and never look back. But yeah, very influential moment there from Senator Sanders. It really changed the state of the race because before then we could see Biden was still, no one could really make a dent in him. He was still just, trotting along with his, 25, 30%. And then Sanders really started to catch up to him. You can really see Sanders catching up, eventually surpassing Biden, Biden taking the lead back from him. But overall, the trajectory is clear. The blue line, which is Sanders, there's a clear upward momentum for him. There was a bit of a bump first, and then it mostly was stabilizing out. And then he went into a surge to surpass Joe Biden. So, yeah, that's it for today's video, guys. Thank you so much for watching, and in a few days I'll be back with the most influential moment in the 2020 polling. Thank you for watching, and good night.